once they tell of their defeat in 45. They all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. They say the prisoner of Spandau was a symbol of defeat. Whilst Hess remained in prison, then the fascists they would beat. So the promise of an Aryan world would never materialize. So why did they all come out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died? The world is riddled with maggots. The maggots are getting fat. They're making a tasty meal of all the bosses and bureaucrats. They're taking over the boardrooms and they're fat and full of pride. And they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. So if you meet with these historians, I'll tell you what to say. Tell them that the Nazis never really went away. They're out there burning houses down and peddling racist lies. And we'll never rest again until every Nazi dies.
Woke up one morning and there were soldiers. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Woke up one morning and there were soldiers. The invasion had begun. Lend me your shoulder, we'll stand together. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Lend me your shoulder, we'll stand together. But I feel my time has come, and if I die here for the resistance, oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. And if I die here for the resistance, you must lay me in my grave among the flowers upon the mountain. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Among the flowers upon the mountain, let me rest among the brave. Someday the people will pick the flowers. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Someday the people will pick the flowers, and they will remember my name. This is the flower of the resistance. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. This is the flower of the resistance, and those who died for liberty. This is the flower of the resistance. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. This is the flower of the resistance, and those who died for liberty. This is the flower of our resistance, and those who died for liberty.
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man?
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
I was born in a Dublin street where the lion runs do beat, and the lovely English people walked all over us. And every single night when they tell, come home tight, he'd invite the neighbours out with this chorus. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the real and lovely lace of Gilshandra.
Hello there, hello there, hello there, everybody. How are we all? I am very well. Thank you for asking. Yes, slop. We're just doing slop tonight. I'm not going to pretend it's anything other than that. It's just slop. We're just doing slop. Because I can't be bothered. can't be asked, alright? Yes, no, to the person who asked, there's no posh bird tonight. She's in London, which is an increasing thing because she's successful, and that's fucking dope. I'm very proud of her. But I do suspect that will lead to a less and less streaming together, which is a shame on a personal level, but I genuinely am very, very proud of her, and wish her all the best. Anyway, as a John B. No, it's not, I'm not cancelling John B's. It's a reference to the Beach Boys song. So you know, which itself I think was based on an old calypso tune from like the late 19th century or something. Anyway, so but I was just there are so many words that sound or look like slop that I can fit in. You know, slop of the pops. Slopagander of the deed, etc. Slopportunity knocks. Another good one. Anyway. Hello there, Some Random Geek. Everyone go and follow Some Random Geek, who is awesome and in chat there. Anyway. Could you get an officially licensed Onion Infowar hat from the Crank for the Crank Slop? I suppose I could do. Maybe. Yeah. What do you have planned for the 100th anniversary of the UK general strike? Literally nothing. I have absolutely nothing planned for that. Do you have any suggestions? Thank you for the redirection on YouTube. No problem, Some Random Geek. Enjoy. Enjoy. Yeah, what do you suggest I do for the century of class struggle since then? Cry, maybe? I don't know. We could do an all-nighter on the 7th. Yeah, why not? Fuck it. I mean, I'm tired after like 3 hours of streaming, but yeah, let's do an all-nighter because I could definitely do that, you know. No, I will on the on election night, yeah. Anyway, enough. Thank you, Mr. Peter Wood, for 18 months. That is a year and a half, my man, of me singing at you. And here's to many, many more months of me wasting your time and my vocal cords and your eardrums with that noise. Much love to you. Anyway, yes, you can do the usual things. You can give generously or not generously or not at all, I suppose, in the ways that you know you can with bits and subs and all of that sort of shit. And it would make me feel slightly less sorry for myself, I think, which would be nice. Yeah. A mega stream with Turn Left and Hiller on the 7th would be awesome. That would be awesome. I'll try and make that happen, but I can't promise anything. Could you speak closer to the mic? Oh, is it not? It's the volume sounded okay, but did I sound distant? I was only a couple of feet away from the microphone. Eat the mic. No. Unless Mike's into it. Ew. Oh, here's I can't give a duck with a journal. Right, so here's the actual math. Gold in urine is about... I'm not reading about piss. I'm not doing piss. Stop it. Right. I'm not doing piss. I'm doing shit tonight, okay? Boom shakalaka. Right. I assume there will be distractions and side tracks and tangents, as there always are. And that might be necessary, because the actual only video I have, it is not very long. It's like 20 minutes. Which is like a 6-hour fucking reaction for me, I suppose, because I do tend to go on a bit. But it's... I don't know what to make of this. Actually, it's 26 minutes. Actually, that's not that long. Short. Yeah, that's fine, actually. We'll just get into it. We'll just get into it. Let's not piss around. President Sunday. The gentleman you see on the screen there. I've streamed with him in the past. He's alright. We don't agree on everything, but we've always been okay in the past. And I wouldn't usually have watched this, in all honesty, but the reaction I got from people to this was that he'd gone like full Putin or something. Someone said he sounded like Haz from what's the thing, the channel he did, Infrared. Anyway, but who is this guy? This guy is President Sunday, who is not the president of anything necessarily, but that is the name they go by online. They're nom de net, so to speak. Anyway, they are a quite pretentious Canadian streamer. That is all you really need to know in terms of context. They are on the left to some extent, and have previously been in, I suppose, vaguely supportive of the Ukrainian people's right to self-defense and such, and that may have changed. I don't know. Let us not prejudge it. The only reason I went into this is because people reacted really not reacted, but like they said that this was mad. And I trust your judgment when it comes to Slop. I made him rage quit the Discord. That was funny. Okay, well done, Byron. That's pretty good. Anyway, the video is called Neolibs Are Using Ukrainians as Human Shields for Israel. Okay. Now, I don't know what the person's point is going to be. Oh, he didn't like my Charlie Kirk jokes. That's true, yeah. Pretentious prick. Anyway, if I don't know what the guy's point is going to be, but if it's that there are some people out there who are, liberal or conservative pricks who are, generally supportive of Ukraine but not of the Palestinian people, or that are in some way, I don't know, as it says there, sort of using Ukraine as a way of defending Israel in some way. I guess there are some of those people around. But I suspect that it goes a bit deeper than that. Does it? I don't know. We'll see. This could be terrible. This could be awful content. I don't know. But we're going to take a look. And I will give you my honest appraisal as we go along. Let's hit it. But not quit it. Yeah? Oh, what? That is muted. That is a fucking cracking technological start. Right.
Which is why I'm coining a new term for these people. Pedophile. For the Dylan...
Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh my word. Okay, so there's no foreplay. There's no easing us into the topic. This is just straight into the... Ooh, just straight into it. A pedophile. Right, okay, okay. I presume that's not somebody who is sexually attracted to former Swiss tennis champion Roger Federer. Or is turned on by the concept of American fiat currency. Fed. Anyway. I assume this is like a way of saying pedophile, but it's for the federal authorities or whatever. I imagine. I hate the American pronunciation. Right, well, exactly. They're Canadian. There's no excuse. Anyway, I suppose I shouldn't prejudge. Let us allow President Sunday to expand upon his point and tell us why he has coined this phrase and to whom he is applying it and why.
Burnses of the world who are effectively going to be disparaging actual leftists and progressives because they have a more tepid, nuanced position on Ukraine and are actively against genocides in Sudan, against illegal wars in Iran, against the genocides against the Palestinians, and so on and so forth.
Where we were fundraising for progressive candidates, would PV have asked people like Crystal Ball or Hassan Piker who fundraised for a candidate that calls himself progressive? Their response to Palestine was, oh, yeah, I support Palestine. I mean, I don't really want to stop any of the aid to Israel. I don't actually want to do anything on this. But yeah, of course, but I support Palestine. Someone would say, do you support Palestine? I mean, AOC, for abstaining on a vote for defensive aid to Israel when it comes to these things, she got so much heat from parts and sections of the progressive left.
Yeah. Because she didn't vote against it. Yeah. That's... I mean, they're an elected official. You're allowed to make a judgment on them not doing a thing. Yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable. You should vote to not send more American taxpayers' money to slaughter Palestinians. Yeah. Fair enough.
Candidate cannot have a position on this whatsoever, not want to defend Ukraine after we asked Ukraine to disarm itself and threaten them with starvation, and then pro-Ukraine candidates are being asked to fundraise for them. There's a different social standard around the war in Ukraine.
Well, because a whole lot of pro-Ukraine people, you will notice, are perfectly fine with the genocide of Palestinians. Isn't that interesting? A whole lot of pro-Ukraine people are perfectly fine turning a blind eye to genocides elsewhere that America is directly involved in. Isn't that interesting? The difference between Russia and Ukraine at this juncture is that Ukraine's on this side of the line and Russia's on this side. Because for the...
What? Okay, time out, Home Slice. The fuck do you possibly mean by that? Like, I was with him that weird thing that Dylan Burns said was dumb. Okay, that was dumb. That was silly. On either side of the line... I mean, the Russian side of the line is still Ukrainian territory that Russia has invaded and occupies currently. So, yeah, I mean, in a very literal sense, they are both sides of the line. But that line is in Ukraine, so Russian soldiers shouldn't be there. Do you see the point? Okay. Like, surely your argument can just be turned back around on you now. That you're using the Palestinian people as human shields for Russia, basically. Right? Okay.
The Ukrainians who are picked up against their will and blown to bits against Russian guns, they're the same. If Ukraine doesn't beat and enslave its citizens and send them against their will to get killed by Russians, Ukrainian citizens will get hurt.
Yeah, like conscription's horrible. Yeah. Conscription's fucking terrible. I'm not gonna defend that, but like, in war, conscription's always happened. And again, Ukraine is fighting a defensive battle here. Okay, fair enough.
You see the insanity? We are suddenly talking about Ukraine again on this channel, which is interesting, because it's a conflict a lot of people have largely started to ignore. Are you doing all right now?
Well, because, I mean, nothing that dramatic is happening in this. Well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. Bombs are still happening. But, like, there's no... Look, it's stalemate. It's just stalemate trench warfare for the most part. So, like, it's just... No offence, but it's boring. Like, I don't know what opinion can you even have on it when nothing's really changing. It's been going for like fucking 4 years, whatever it is now. A long time, certainly a lot longer than the 3-day military operation. It's a very long 3 days, isn't it, Vlad? Yeah.
Fine. I'm not sleeping very well, but I'm fine. I'm getting used to, I'm still rebooting my system after the past month and a half. We have cycles on this channel, as someone in the Discord server sort of put it earlier, where people have to make peace with the fact that, you know, sometimes they like some of my content, but they dislike my political takes on something. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, in 2022, we lost a whole lot of pro-Russia people. Lost a whole lot of people from the server who were like, what? But NATO expansion made it so Russia had to kill tons of civilians and kidnap a bunch of kids and steal a lot of land and bomb hospitals and so on. When October 7th happened and Israel started bombing the bejesus out of civilian centers, we had a whole lot of pro-Israel people leave. Not as many. We didn't really attract that many pro-Israel people, fortunately, but we had a couple loud ones. Israel has to defend itself, okay? Israel has a right to exist. All those people don't. Israel, though. Right to exist. You know, people are totally disposable. But, you know, the Nazi state, that needs to stay, right? That's important. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is not difficult to understand on a moral level. It's actually very simple. You have one corrupt kleptocracy using mercenaries and conscripts to invade another corrupt kleptocracy, which is using significantly more conscripts. And that is actually kind of a...
come on. No. Don't fucking start with this shit. That's not remotely a fair analysis of the situation. Whatever one thinks of Volodymyr Zelensky, he was elected by the people of Ukraine. At least as democratically as any person in that region has ever been elected to an office. Vladimir Putin was absolutely not. These two things are not remotely the same. One of these sides is absolutely the aggressor and in the wrong, and the other is the defender and is in the right, both legally from an international law perspective. Not that international law really means a lot in the modern world, but whatever. Perhaps it never did, perhaps it was always a mirage. But secondly, from a moral perspective, The idea that it's just, well, it's too corrupt kleptocracy. Like, that's such a weird, leftoid, jaded, dumb thing to say. That's so fucking silly and reductive. Come on, man. Ukraine's fucking defending itself. The Ukrainian people are defending hearth and home. A thing that's always been the right thing to fucking do. Like, come on now. See, the thing is, I know President Sunday to be an intelligent man, so I don't know why he would say something so patently dumb. Other than anger, to do propaganda, rage bait, I don't know. It's a shame to see him go down this line. It really is. Maybe he expands upon his point, though. Let's not prejudge.
About it. Initially in the war, there was a lot of rallying around the flag and around the notion of Ukrainian independence and democracy and so on and so forth. And then people realized that they were being hung out to dry because the Ukrainian state is not actually supporting its people and is using them as cannon fodder, which does not make Russia the good guy and doesn't make Russian victory okay. Russia's still kidnapping thousands and thousands of children. It's still murdering civilians deliberately in order to demoralize the population further. That's its strategy. It is currently making bank right now off of oil that Russia is able to sell because of the war with Iran that Zelensky promoted. And everywhere you will see absolute clown show human beings going, well, wait a minute, you're criticizing Ukraine? What's your alternative? Shut up. What do you mean, what's your alternative? I see people saying this so often. No offense to anyone in particular. I see people doing this so often. It's like, well, what do you mean the Ukrainian state is corrupt and it violates the rights of its own citizens and doesn't support them financially and hides its oligarchs' money in Dubai and beats up people who don't want to die for the state that doesn't want to do anything for them in return against their will? That, by the way, sends them when they do comply with forced conscription, which should be a human rights violation by every conceivable metric. You know, we're fine with condemning slavery, and we're fine with condemning murdering civilians until we're enslaving people and murdering them for the purpose of murdering other people. Now suddenly we're fine with it. Because, you know, the state has to exist more than they do. Obviously. You know, despite the fact that they didn't decide the Constitution. Because no individual human being does. They're born into it. They're stuck with it.
This is like baby's first anarchism. It's baby's first anarchism. It's a very unnuanced approach to anything. It's very throwing your toys out of the pram. It's not about the state needing to exist, necessarily. It's about there being an entity called the Ukrainian people, who are a definable group. Both legally as citizens of the Ukrainian nation, but also linguistically, culturally, historically. Who don't want to be ruled by Russia. And have been ruled by Moscow for, well, centuries. Be it under the Russian Empire or under the Soviet Empire. And that's what it was. Let us not be under any illusion here. The Soviet Union was as imperialist as any other empire. Whether it be its own internal colonies like Ukraine or the Baltic nations or the Central Asian stands, or indeed its client states in Central and Eastern Europe, and initially in China and Ethiopia, places like that. And the Ukrainian people don't want that shit anymore. They are a relatively new country as well, in terms of being an independent nation state. But the Ukrainian people are a defined group, with a defined set of borders that have been violated. Now, you can whinge and complain and stamp your feet about how this is slavery and so on and so forth. But when it comes to one's own freedom and the freedom of future generations, it goes beyond you being owned for the purpose of making somebody else money. Not that there's no one making money out of it, it's war after all. But there's clearly something much larger going on there. There are lots of people who were very willing to fight and potentially die. And unfortunately, it's one of the realities of the world that yes, there are things that you don't decide, like the country you're born in, or the geopolitical era in which you are born. And to that, you essentially just have to say, tough shit. Really? It's not nice. And I'm of course saying this from a position of privilege, having been a person who has not been drafted and is not going to be drafted. But for a historical fluke, I could have been, though. It really was not that long ago that Britain was dragooning people into either its navy or into the British Expeditionary Force in the First and Second World Wars. Very much within living memory. But either way, I'm saying it from a position of privilege, right? Because I'm not the one being drafted. I'm not the one being conscripted. But ultimately, you do have to say tough shit. That's just how the fucking cards fell. You were in a place where the conscription was happening at that particular time. It's always been thus. It will always be thus. And I say that with absolute confidence, not in the same way that people would say, well, they said the rule of kings was, eternal, and it wasn't. They said the Roman Empire would last forever, and it didn't. I mean, war will always happen as long as humans are human. There may come a time when we evolve to be some super big brain smart genius boys who don't need to do war anymore. Or don't have a desire to do war anymore. And in that situation, we wouldn't be human anymore. We'd be some other species of animal. We'd be some other being. So as human beings, we will always have war. You may be unfortunate enough to grow up in a time when you are of fighting age to have to go and fight said war. When it's defensive, and in the case of Ukraine, it is defensive. They're not sending anyone abroad. They're fighting in their own homelands. I think conscription is perfectly understandable. It's not nice. It's not nice at all. It's shit. But that shitness has been pushed upon the Ukrainian people by Russia's invasion. Because they weren't conscripting loads of people before Russia invaded. They did so afterwards. Or during, I suppose, whatever. This evil has been thrust upon the Ukrainian people by an outside force that they are defending themselves against. And for you to both sides this fucking nonsense, as if they are remotely equal, because, oh, well, there are rich oligarchs on both sides. Of course there fucking are. There always have been. Does that mean there's never like a righteous time to fight for your own fucking existence? And I don't mean the nation state, because this has happened long before the nation state even fucking existed. I'm talking about people not wanting to be ruled by a foreign power for the benefit of that foreign power. And I say that as a student of British history. where we went around the world and imposed that shit on other people. And you know what? I absolutely support the American people's right to their own self-determination. Doesn't mean they get to steal the land of the native peoples, but let's put that to one side for a second. In terms of their fight against the Britons, or the British Crown, they were perfectly justified. I support the independence movements in India. I wish to fuck that the likes of Canada and Australia would fucking stand on their own 2 feet and get from under the boot of fucking Buckingham Palace as well. I stand for the emancipation of all of these peoples and all of the freedom fights that they fought. And this is no different in a moral sense. The Ukrainian people do not wish to be used, exploited and controlled from Moscow, as they have been for centuries. It is perfectly understandable that they impose usual wartime measures. Again, not because they want to do so, although I'm sure there are authoritarians in Ukraine who would want to do so, but I'm saying the Ukrainian government weren't doing this before Russia invaded. Russia forced this situation onto the people of Ukraine. The fact that the Ukrainians are taking extraordinary measures to fight an extraordinary existential threat seems perfectly reasonable to me. As you pointed out, President Sunday, the Russian government are abducting thousands of children. That is an act of absolute genocide. That is genocide under any realistic description. It is literally one of the definitions in the UN Charter, which itself is an incomplete, as indeed was stated by the man who literally coined the phrase genocide. He said that that definition was incomplete. But even under the definitions used by the UN, that is an act of genocide. So, like, can you blame the Ukrainians for taking the extraordinary measures of trying to stop themselves being genocided? No amount of hand-wringing about how... I mean, I'm not going to defend Dylan Burns here, whatever. No amount of hand-wringing about how Dylan Burns is fucking both siding this or saying that there's some equivalence between Israel and Russia or the Palestinians or whatever, right? No amount of that bullshit deflects from the fact that you are both siding an obviously not both sides situation. Genuine question. Are there links between the term being drafted and the King's Shilling in draft ale? I don't think so. I could be wrong on that, but I've never heard that that's the case. And that seems like one of the things I might have learned. You think he's taking this position out of spite? But out of spite to who? Is he allowing his dislike of Dylan Burns to get in the way of his geopolitical interpretations? Maybe he is, I don't know. But either way, a country defending itself from being genocided is perfectly reasonable to raise an army to enact that. Because, like, when people say, what's your alternative? I think it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask, what would happen if the Ukrainians didn't do this? If the Ukrainian government had not instituted a draft and had just allowed the Russian columns of tanks to march or to stroll into Kyiv, what would have happened exactly? How would this have been better for the Ukrainian people? I'm not entirely sure.
They're stuck with the stuff happening around them. They're not allowed to leave. They can't choose their sovereign. There's no tacit consent to the sovereignty of the Ukrainian state, so on and so forth. But suddenly, you are not allowed to criticize the fact that essentially the Ukrainian state is using ICE tactics against its own citizens and using Russian excesses to cover over for its own crimes against humanity. Against its own people. That's not even why I'm talking about it. I am talking about it because I am now seeing Democrat shills who are colluding with each other to attempt to squeeze out actual leftists from the Democrat Party, using the failure to kowtow to Zelensky as a justification for squeezing out candidates who want to end genocides that the United States is actively funding and illegal wars that the United States is actively embarking on, which is a problem because in addition to all of this, the genocides that these people are advocating against don't help Ukraine. You know, besides the whole murdering lots of innocent people part, we can set that aside apparently. It's actively hurting the Ukrainian war effort, which means the policy position of people who are pro-Ukraine but anti-candidates who are against the wars in Iran and against supporting Israel's genocide of Palestinians and genocide of Shia Muslims and attacks on Iran, they're actually directly at odds with each other, which means they aren't even concerned about Ukraine. They are literally just concerned with getting communists back into a marginalized position. And by communists, they don't even mean communists. They mean people who aren't Israel shills. They mean Hassan Piker. Famous communist Hassan Piker. Famous anti-capitalist Hassan Piker. Basically the next Karl Marx. And they are...
True. Where was that comment from Cumro? Had a belter then. Where was it? There we go. It's not like I empathise with Ukraine as a Welshman. Not like we've got an eastern next door neighbour seeking to remove our sovereignty, take all our resources, control our land, air or sea or anything. Oh wait. No. Did someone call for a delivery from the based department? Because it just fucking arrived.
Colluding with pro-genocide pedophiles to do it, which is why I'm coining a new term for these people. For the Dylan Burnses of the world, who are perfectly fine being in the same room with someone who is in court because they are sharing intimate images without consent from the people they were taken with to minors elsewhere. Pedophile. It occurred to me...
Who was he referring to there, by the way? He's okay sharing a room with who? Destiny? Is that what... Oh, no, he did take that. Did he send them to people? I don't know. I haven't kept up with the slop. The drama of it all. I just assume as a rich white man he won't go to jail, even though he may have committed horrific crimes, you know? It's America. Not locking up rich white men is kind of its national pastime. Well, that and school shootings, you know.
In a dream. They are pedophiles. It's beautiful, isn't it? It brings tears to my eyes just to say it. Because this is the list. We are pro-kleptocratic oligarchs who enslave and murder their own people to go murder and enslave other enslaved people and mercenaries, to be fair. Fuck them. And we are pro mass murdering innocent people abroad, even though it directly undermines the first thing. So long as Hassan Piker does not get to go on Joe Rogan, that's where we're at. And by the way, like, it needs to be said, people think that Ukrainian corruption is like, you know, it's sort of an accoutrement to any sort of culture. It's like, well, every society is corrupt. You know, we all know there's two tiers of law. We know that, like, you know, Trump gets a bunch of people.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're going to say, like, Ukraine is somehow uniquely corrupt, America's president is a paedophile. Notice the correct pronunciation of the word there. Trump is a child rapist who is actively doing war so that he and his friends can bet on the stock market and make a fortune over the corpses of Iran. And, of course, to help out Benjamin Netanyahu stay in power and so on and so forth. The idea that Ukraine is anywhere near as corrupt as that is fucking stupid. Really stupid. Don't talk shit. Like, this is some, like, weird Westoid-brained shit. Like, corruption's bad. Obviously, we notice the corruption. It's bad. Motherfucker, corruption is endemic in this system. Corruption is in every fucking conceivable level. It's just most of the corruption isn't called corruption. It's called, you know, creative accounting. Or lobbying. Or financial contributions to political PACs or whatever, right? That's not corruption. That's just civil engagement. Or civic engagement, whatever. Look, it's bollocks. The West is the most corrupt part of the world. It just fucking is. It's just rich enough that the average person doesn't give a fuck. The reason that the corruption seems more terrible in places like, I don't know, sub-Saharan Africa is because everyone's dirt poor. Partly because we stole their shit. Again, it's not underdevelopment, it's overexploitation. It's theft. The West stole their shit and props up our corruption with their wealth. British corruption has been successfully covered up and papered over by the diamonds under Johannesburg and the tea of India. And forcing the people of China to have our heroin. Technically opium, but it's basically heroin. Yeah. And as you've been pointing out during the entirety of this video, it's literally the point of your fucking video. The West is the one currently engaging in all of these genocides. Who is it that's doing the genocides and the wars and the bombings? It's the West. When you say that Russia is being helped by the oil that's being bought on the international market because of the restriction, because of the removal of sanctions, because of the Straits of Hormuz and all that shit, who's buying that oil? Is it Malawi? Is it Vanuatu? No, it's not. It's America and Britain and fucking France and shit. The same was true when ISIS was stealing oil from the people of Syria and selling it on the black market. Where do you think that was ending up? It was ending up in my car. Not because I chose it to be there, it just did. Because fucking British Petroleum or Shell or whoever bought it. Via intermediaries so they could have, plausible deniability, of course. The West is the funder of the corruption. And actually, you raise, I think, an interesting analogy earlier when you talked about slavery. The arguments that pro-slavery people are not entirely dissimilar to the nonsense you're currently coming out with. They'll say things like, well, who was selling the slaves to the traders on the coast? It was the black Africans themselves. And on the face of it, that seems like a reasonable point of contention. Like, yeah, there is some problem there. And undoubtedly, the people who were selling slaves were evil cunts and deserved not... Well, I was about to say deserved to be remembered as bad people, but I actually deserve not to be remembered. Let them die the second death, as far as I'm concerned. But that argument misses the wood through the trees, right? That these people were captured in wars. These people weren't of the same tribe as themselves. They weren't selling their own fucking families into slavery. They were selling prisoners of war from wars. And the Europeans, and eventually North Americans and South Americans, realised that in order to keep a good flow of new, fresh slaves to the coast, and indeed therefore to keep the price of slaves down, they should foment wars between those tribes, so that both sides would end up with more prisoners of war, and both sides would therefore be selling more slaves on the coast to the Europeans and North Americans and South Americans and Central Americans and Caribbean despots. It is the West driving the corruption here. Like, when people used Hunter Biden's connection to Burisma, the Ukrainian company, as an example of Ukrainian corruption, isn't that also an example of American corruption? Because if we are to believe that he got that job because he was the American vice president's son, that means that it's actually the American government putting either direct or indirect pressure on the Ukrainian people and their companies and institutions to act in ways that are beneficial to American citizens, or indeed American companies more largely. The West is the one doing the corruption in these nations. Or at least driving the general force that causes the corruption in these nations. Even if they are not themselves the ones necessarily actually doing it. Not every corrupt person is from the West, of course. Anyway. I told you I'd fucking ramble. I know I would.
Government get away with being buddy-buddy with people like Epstein. They hide their money offshore and so on and so forth. And they don't really think hard about what this means in the case of Ukraine. Ukraine is actively brutalizing civilians if they don't get sent to their deaths. If they don't come...
Yeah, conscription is a thing. Yes. We're all aware of conscription. No, honestly, it's giving me, like, again, it's baby's first anarchism. Rantings.
Oh, it's unfair that we have... people expect us to do things.
Like, it's just pathetic. Yeah, there are things you owe to society. There are things you owe to other people, and that they owe to you. Yeah, that's actually a thing that exists. Nobody is an entirely independent, sovereign entity. There are connections between us. Are you calling him an anarchiddy? No, because people who use the word anarchiddy unironically are fucking dickheads who can actually fucking make out with my anus, as far as I'm concerned. No, that's ridiculous. I'm just saying it's got that kind of, why should I have to do homework, Mom? Type of anarchist vibe to it, you know? Why should bedtime exist? Down with the state! You know, it's that thing. Which, like, most anarchists that then grow up and stay anarchists are, you know, get past that level and find a more nuanced and rich view of the world. And that's beautiful. God bless them. I don't necessarily always agree with them, but that's cool. Rebellious for the sake of it. Well, not even rebellious for the sake of it. Rebellious just because... just because they don't want to do a thing, I suppose. Like, it's not necessarily a principled take. It's almost like a post hoc rationalization or something. Oh, well, no, that's not quite right. It's difficult to explain, and I'm tired. But, you know, moralist kind of anarchy. Well, it's not even moralist. It's just petty. It's just... I mean, to be fair, okay. I said I won't call him an anarchy because I think that's a stupid term used by dickheads. But it is childish, isn't it? It is juvenile. It is... it's unformed. It's anarchism without any direction. Yeah, no offense, Flow Snake. That's fine. You go and do what you got to do.
Comply with cops who are not fighting, scooping them up and sending them to their deaths. So when we are talking about corruption in Ukraine, we're not talking about people embezzling public like from slush funds in peacetime. We are talking about people who are actively killing their own civilians because of a manpower shortage while they are hiding their own money and family out of Ukraine like there's no war going on. And then we have clowns saying, what's your alternative? And I cannot overemphasize my contempt for that question, because it presumes that you are people in this equation. You're not people in this equation. You're not humans. You don't have decisions. You don't have power here. You are not policymakers. You're not people who control vast sums of money that can sway world leaders to change.
Well, hang on a minute. Hang on. Right. No one is suggesting that you actually can do anything about this, President Sunday. It's asking a kind of moral, or not even a moral, a kind of practical question which informs your morality, or is informed by your morality here, right? It's understanding that if the Ukrainian people don't do this, what is the alternative? What happens in that situation? Because if they don't fight, what you think the Ukrainians are going to be perfectly fine under the boot of Russia? That's a better situation, a better ending to them? How is that a preferential situation? Because realistically, it does have to be one or the other. They either fight and attempt to survive, or they die, right? You already admitted they're stealing babies and shit. They're being genocided by the Russians in areas that the Russians live. Or, not live, occupy. My assumption of his position is either they win it without conscription or they deserve to lose. Without conscription, virtually every army in history would have lost. Damn near every army in existence in wartime has needed some form of conscription. That's always been the case. It doesn't mean that the fight that is being undertaken is any less necessary or moral. Or indeed more necessary or moral. It's essentially moot to the point.
How they behave. You have no capacity to override even the amount of money that Ukrainian oligarchs are siphoning out of Ukraine. You have literally nothing. Nothing but the delusion that you can decide, like on a WIC panel, who gets invited to the to a Democrat conference.
A WIC panel. Okay, so this is just him like bitching about people he doesn't like. Okay, like cool, but why drag the Ukrainian people into it? Why not just call WIC a bitch and leave it at that? Why have you got to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus just because Dylan Burns is a knob, according to you? You know, like what? Very strange. Very strange.
Who gets to represent leftists and progressive, quote unquote, on social media? Nobody asked you. You don't have any resources.
No, to be fair, Wick is a little bitch, but that's not the point I'm making. But he is a little bitch, true.
You are a resource. What's your alternative? Well, the alternative is you don't self-delude yourself into thinking that uncritically, not questioning anything that a regime does, is in some way making a positive difference on behalf of the people it's brutalizing. Like you at some point, leftists allowed themselves to get deluded into thinking that a class war was between a bad nation state and a good nation state. No.
Hang on, we'll time the fuck out. What leftists are saying this? It's two absolutely bourgeois states, yeah. No one's suggesting anything else. No one is suggesting this is a class war. What the fuck are you talking about? He's off his fucking rocker. What happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? Because he was, like, I disagreed with him on stuff, but, like, he was a sensible guy. This is just... Yeah, this is has-like. This is just fucking rambling shit. This is wank, man. This is really bad.
Oh, no, a class war is between classes. It's between people who control capital and people who need to do what the people who control capital say or they starve.
Yes. Thank you. But no one is arguing the contrary, or I suppose, can you get a contrary? No one is suggesting that anything different to that. I have not heard a single person suggest that the Ukraine-Russia war is a class war. I genuinely haven't. If someone wants to point me into the direction of one person that has said that, I will absolutely concede the point that that one person is a lunatic.
Or, as the case may be, get beaten, get thrown into a dirty gym somewhere with no resources, and then get dropped from a plane to go die behind Russian lines. And the only reason why I'm talking about this in the context of Ukraine is because you have dipshits in North...
Is because Wick is a bitch.
You really are the most devious bastard in New York City.
I have no idea if Wick lives in New York City. I just wanted to play that clip.
America, who are using people failing to, again, bend over and be completely uncritical about what Ukraine is doing to its own people and its complicity in illegal wars abroad, to attack leftists who are trying to alter the United States' engagement in active, ongoing genocides and illegal wars directly. And leaving everything aside, let's be
okay, but like, on your basis that you were saying earlier, you're not an actor in this. Your power doesn't equate to that of the rich oligarchs of the United States. You can't affect this in any way whatsoever. Do you see how self-defeating and silly your point is? Even Hassan Piker, even his reach, cannot outreach a fucking billionaires buying newspapers and TV stations. Come on now.
clear. Russia is the aggressor in the Russia-Ukraine war. It's Russia's fault that the war is happening. Ukraine is actively enslaving its population and sending them to their deaths, using fascistic rhetoric to justify it. Because the Ukrainian state is not the people. The Ukrainian state...
Fascistic rhetoric. Okay. I genuinely don't know how worthwhile this is watching, to be honest. Because this just seems like Has, but more boring. Like, at least Has will shout and go on about being a massive gorilla or whatever. Which is a thing he's said about him. So, like, the guerrilla army or whatever the fuck they call themselves. Whereas this is just like fucking NyQuil infrared.
State is a class apparatus. The people who run Ukraine are not Ukrainians. They are not on the front lines. They will never be. Many of them aren't even in Ukraine. And so you're going to start seeing a whole lot of people in the next little while. Dylan Burns was doing this the other day. This is why this popped. This is why I'm now angry about this. Because I was placidly ignoring it until recently. You're going to see a lot of people who are ostensibly pro-freedom, anti-Trump, who are effectively going to be disparaging actual leftists and progressives because they have a more tepid, nuanced position on Ukraine and are actively against genocides in Sudan, against illegal wars in Iran, against the genocides against the Palestinians, and so on and so forth. But these are connected. Why? Well, because a whole lot of pro-Ukraine people, you will notice, are perfectly fine with the genocide of Palestinians. Isn't that interesting? A whole lot of pro-Ukraine people are perfectly fine turning a blind eye to genocides elsewhere that America is directly involved in. Isn't that interesting? A whole lot of pro-Ukraine people are conspicuously silent when Zelensky encourages war with Iran, you know, to save its own people who are conscripting their own citizens, don't you know? A core principle of liberalism, in fact, it is the core principle of liberalism. The central tenet of liberalism is that the legitimacy of state violence is because it is by the consent of the governed. The state has emerged as a consequence of a social contract.
Yeah, but basically, yeah. Thank you to John Ladd for becoming a member. Much love. And thank you, Carl Brown, for gifting a membership, or two memberships. Yes, thank you. Sorry, because I don't have the noises on, because I'm sick of Gennaro Gattuso's voice. I've missed stuff. But thank you everyone for thank you everyone for your generosity. If we get onto a hype train, I will finger myself. Actually, I won't do that. But... Hey, Mouselander, how you getting on?
It exists for your benefit, and you consent to its rule and enjoy its benefits. And so it has the right to enact its force on you, because when it upholds the law, when you violate it, it is actually enacting your own will against yourself. That's the logic. I don't buy it, but that's the logic. Another core principle of liberalism, which is the product of the first one, is that you need to be allowed to leave. Why? Well, because we don't come into our communities from a state of nature. We aren't there for the initial, you know, making of the social contract. We're born after it's already been established. And so we have a bit of a conundrum. How do you consent to something you were born into? And the answer is, you don't leave. You choose not to leave. And by choosing not to leave, by choosing to remain and enjoy the benefits of the place in which you live, you tacitly consent retroactively to that place's rule. This is one of the reasons why the British Empire insisted on allowing conquered Indian subjects of the crown to relocate throughout the empire as British subjects at will. For a time, racism prevailed there. But what happens when you prevent people from leaving? Well, your entire justification...
Hang on. Are you saying Britain was racist? Because I have it on good authority, Lawrence Fox, that we are the most tolerant nation in Europe. So, checkmate, libs. George Galloway says some crap along these lines these days. True.
Throbbing.
For whatever force you impose against them has gone out the window. It's not for their own good because you're throwing them into the meat grinder of war, and it's not by their consent because they are not allowed to consent. So let's be clear, the difference between Russia and Ukraine at this juncture is that Ukraine's on this side of the line and Russia's on this side.
And Russia is in Ukrainian territory, yeah. The fuck, man? Oh, this is rubbish.
As for the Ukrainians who are picked up against their will and blown to bits against Russian guns...
Hang on, George Galloway's inconsolable about Orban losing in Hungary. Is that true? Was he a support? He wasn't a supporter of Orban, surely. Look, I know he's gone off the fucking deep end a bit, but I don't... Oh, I don't know. Maybe he was. He's a bit of a cunt, but I don't think so.
They're the same. So I'm having no truck anymore with people who are using Ukraine as a bludgeon to attack progressives who are against genocide. I think it's one of the most...
Well, I will agree with him there. If people are doing that, that's fucked up, yeah. The other shit he's been talking is rubbish, but that I will agree with him on that one point.
Disgusting things you can do. I think it's one of the most disgusting things you can do. I think trading Palestinian and Sudanese and Iranian and so lives for the...
George Galloway is in Moscow in exile. Is that really true? Do you have a link to that story or whatever? I didn't hear he was in exile.
Right to kill Ukrainians as a treat is revolting. I think it's revolting. Have you talked to Brooks about this yet? I'm actually pretty sure me and Brooks agree on this. Because I'm also pro-Ukraine. I'm pro-Ukraine. Russia is stealing thousands of children.
You don't sound very pro-Ukraine, I have to be honest.
Ukraine killing more and more of its citizens will not save those children. Russia invaded.
Okay, and this is where you do have to answer the question. Then you don't have an alternative. That is clearly true. But what happens if they don't continue to fight? How will that save those children? How the fuck will them not fighting save those children? Please do try and square that circle for me. Fighting may save some people. Capitulating dooms all of them. Galloway and his young wife got stopped. Why am I not surprised he has a young wife? Got stopped by UK border force in December 2024 and were interviewed by officers and were rude about his wife's nail varnish. Burn. George fled the UK and hasn't been back since. But because of the nail varnish, Barbs. He got nail varnish mogged.
They didn't have to invade. Russia invaded. It's the aggressor. I think conscription should be treated as war crime, just as killing civilians deliberately for the sake of breaking.
Well done. You've just made everything ever a war crime or whatever. You've just made a ludicrous statement, because then every war is just a war crime. There is no way of doing war then, which basically renders your accusation meaningless, because it's not enforceable by anything. I think having an army is a war crime. I think we should arrest every army. This is sad to see. Honestly, this is really pathetic.
Taking down enemy morale is a war crime. I think defending that out of hand because the state must survive.
No, fuck the state. Fuck the state. I'm not fucking defending the Ukrainian state. I'm defending the Ukrainian people's right to fucking exist. They have a right to exist with self-determination. The Ukrainian people have a right to decide on their own form of government, free from the coercive fucking force and indeed guns and bullets of the Russian state or the Russian army or the Russian people, frankly. They are a separate and sovereign entity, and they have every right to fucking defend themselves. Self-defense is not itself a war crime. Stop being foolish. Yes, Wick is a bitch. Yes, Dylan Burns is a fucking shitlib. These are things we know. You don't have to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus on the altar of you rowing with people on the internet.
Is disgusting. You are a defender of war crimes. I think even more disgusting is when people ignore all of that deliberately, not out of an impassioned desire to defend Ukraine, but as a passive-aggressive way to attack progressives who are gaining ground among Democrat voters. Because it turns out that
Democratic, but okay, whatever.
Lib pedophiles just aren't very saleable anymore. They just aren't that. Nobody really wants them. That's what all the Hassan Cope is about, by the way. That's why people are so mad about Hassan Piker right now, because people like him. Nobody.
And he's hot. Let's be honest. It's also because he's hot.
Nobody likes the ugly, disgusting people who don't like Hassan. And Hassan's got issues. I got disagreements with Hassan. Hassan is reckless. He says stupid shit sometimes. He also doesn't connive with losers to defend genocide. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass on something.
True, and he did do 9/11, so you know.
Things. Well, I mean, all moralizing is like in Nietzschean terms is slave morality, right? Like the entire point is to have like an ulterior.
Yeah, but fuck nature.
An alternative arena, plane on which to you know, rank yourself positively against people that outrank you in terms of sheer strength. I think moralizing about. I have seen people. I've brought this up. And one of the things that I've noticed that's very disturbing is that a whole lot of people, when you bring up the issue of conscription in Ukraine, will just immediately brush it aside. It's like, well, Ukraine needs to survive. What if Ukraine doesn't conscript its citizens? Its citizens will get hurt. If Ukraine doesn't beat and enslave its citizens and send them against their will to get killed by Russians, Ukrainian citizens will get hurt. You see the insanity? Ukraine has become a...
Okay, we'll break it down even further for you then. If the already large number of Ukrainians being hurt in this war, which by the way is the fault of Russia, they're not just being killed by Russia, they're being murdered by the Russian government. And that includes, by the way, the Russians who are being murdered by the Russian government in this war as well. If that already large number of Ukrainians is not put in harm's way, a much larger number of Ukrainians will absolutely be fucked. So if you want to look at it just from a utilitarian calculus point of view, which is a very grim and disgusting way of looking at it, but ultimately is a practical guide or whatever, they are suggesting, these people, your interlocutor here, that if they don't fight, a much larger group of people, the 40 or so million Ukrainians, will suffer hugely. Those that stay will suffer massively, and of course the lives being overturned or upturned and destroyed and scattered to the wind, the millions of Ukrainians who would not want to or could not possibly return to the land that they and their ancestors have lived on for tens of thousands of years. So, like, it's not actually that complicated a thing. And again, I don't think he's a stupid man. I know him to be a relatively intelligent man. And so I don't think he's making this in good faith. Because that would mean that he would have to be very fucking stupid if he were genuinely not able to understand that very basic point. Like, yes, some Ukrainians are going to get hurt. Regardless of what happens. Because the Russian army, the Russian state, imposed those realities on the Ukrainian people. It is the fault of the Russian government that this is happening at all. And so a decision does have to be made as to how the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian state respond to that situation. Who gets hurt and how. Again, it's always the fault of the Russian government that this is taking place. But that ultimately, this is a matter of what, at least the best judgment for how can we possibly survive this evil shit. I buried my fiance's ashes today and I'm wasted. Oh, well, my condolences, John. That is terrible. I hope you and your friend are okay. Or at least will become okay.
Essentially a fascist-making machine for American leftists. It's really weird. It's really weird how we just completely drop all of our critical faculties. Sunday, doesn't most states do that, though? All states do that. Yeah. They all do that. That's why I'm an anarchist, and I'm not a pro-good state versus bad state guy. That's the definition of what states do. Once again, this is why I was very careful to say, even though Ukraine undermines the logic...
I will just say You are not a very good advocate for the anarchist position. That I will just state conclusively.
Of liberalism, that's not logic I abide by. Then why is Ukraine uniquely bad, though? It's not. It's being used for a unique purpose. Ukraine is being rhetorically used for a unique purpose in Democrat rhetoric. I am not opposed to Ukraine getting funding to fight against Russia. I'm for Ukraine getting funded to fight against Russia. Merrick DeVille is apparently traveling to Ukraine to work, I believe, as an EMT. Power to her. Personally, I wish she wouldn't. I rather like Merrick DeVille. I'd like her to stay alive. But I think that's a very respectable thing to do. I have zero respect for clown shows over here who are using the Ukraine issue to browbeat progressives who are more concerned with illegal wars that America is actively embarking on with Zelensky's approval. And so what's happening right now is Zelensky is trying to buy 3 more years. So they're going to chew through the civilian population, becoming increasingly more authoritarian and violent against them, to stretch out the human reserve until maybe possibly a Democrat goes into office. And Democrats will justify literally any single thing that regime uses the cover of the war to do against its own people up until that point.
That is true. The Democrats will do that because we've seen what they will do to support their other geostrategic ally, Israel, which is doing far, far worse, of course. So, yeah, of course they'll do that. They're Democrats. They're fucking useless.
Dollar that goes into Dubai, that goes into an oligarch's pocket, that goes into the pocket of an oligarch's son who is partying it up abroad because if you have money, you're allowed to dodge the draft. Did you know that? It's a major thing in Ukraine. People pay their way. Corruption doesn't just mean...
By the way, I will just point out, that's, again, not a unique thing to Ukraine. That's always been the case. What was the phrase that was used during the American Civil War? There was the commutation fee. That was it. You could pay a commutation fee. Or indeed, you could hire somebody else to be conscripted in your place. Essentially, pay a mercenary to take your position. Which meant that rich men never went to the war. Except as generals, and therefore didn't see the front line or anything. Yeah, this is a thing that most countries have engaged in. It's disgusting and immoral, and actually is, I think, an abuse of human rights. I don't think you should have... If you're going to have conscription, it has to be done equally. And I don't think Ukraine's doing that in the fucking slightest. And there's always dodges. Well, I think there are good and bad draft dodgings, if that makes sense. It depends on the exact situation that one is in, the righteousness of the cause to one which is to which one is being drafted. I think the people who were dodging the draft for the Russian army in this war are perfectly reasonable, and I support them. I think that's a good thing to do. I don't even really care why they're doing it, even if they're just doing it because they're scared. Or because they're... I don't know. They could also hate Ukraine, but they just don't want to go and murder people. Whatever. I don't give a fuck what their reasoning is. Whereas I think if you were dodging the draft, be it as a rich man or a coward or a pacifist or a conscientious objector or whatever your reasoning is in Ukraine, I don't think that's particularly moral. Yeah, Muhammad Ali dodging the draft for Vietnam was absolutely righteous. Yeah. For as he said, no Viet Cong ever called me a N-word. He didn't quite put it like that, he said the word. Which is, of course, like a fun line, because he's a fucking absolute legend. Albeit problematic, to be sure. But there is a serious point there, that the Viet Cong were not a threat to the people of the United States, and especially not a threat to the black citizens of the United States. Whereas in Ukraine, the Russian military is very much a threat to the Ukrainian people. I would imagine Ukrainian anarchists are fighting in the resistance, yeah. I would certainly hope they are. Because war makes for strange bedfellows. Anarchists and the Ukrainian state fighting, not necessarily shoulder to shoulder, but in the same general direction. I'm reminded of a different time in Eastern Europe, not that long ago though, where there were a lot of people who hated the Stalinist regime in the Soviet Union and would never have dreamed of fighting on its side. They, of course, knuckled under and shut the fuck up because they didn't want the KGB didn't exist, the NKVD, to kidnap them or torture them or murder them or otherwise impose sanction upon them. But they would never have took up arms in defence of it until the Nazis rolled up and people saw the alternative. Then all of a sudden the what were known as the frontières, which is an interesting linguistic thing. The frontières were essentially partisans, French partisans during the First World War. French and Belgian partisans. Who would often go behind German lines and kill German soldiers. And there was a thing called the Terrorpsychose, which was the fear of being shot from behind, which gripped so many of them that when they heard people walking behind them, they would often just turn around and shoot. And it was often people on their own side, of course. A lot of innocent, a lot of friendly fire incidents, let's say. Anyway, and the partisans in the Eastern Front became known as frontières as well, because that's how they were known by the Germans. Anyway, the partisans behind the lines, that had seen how the Nazis operated once they'd taken over the place in which they lived, they joined the fucking resistance, However much they despised the Stalinist state, they were more than happy to aid it in throwing out a much worse enemy. War does that. It's a very extreme pressure. And extreme pressure drives things together and apart.
Bad guys get extra money. Corruption means poor guys carry the burden of bad guys getting that extra money. Because those dollars could have paid, for example, for mercenaries. Millions of dollars going into real estate in Dubai, owned by Ukrainian oligarchs, the exact same way Russian oligarchs do.
Those old archaeologists on Time Team were the shit, by the way. Yeah. I loved it. I love that show. In its heyday, there's nothing like Time Team. Fucking dope. Anyway, to what we used to say in 255. There are scenarios where I think it's justifiable to institute a draft, but I also can't blame anyone dodging it. Does that make sense? On a personal level, you can always understand why a person acts in the way they do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you think it's moral. So, saying you understand why someone does a thing is a different claim than the one I'm making, I think. I'm on about the, I suppose, morality of living in a society that you then refuse completely to not necessarily defend, but defend the people of that society from an obvious outside threat. Back when Tony Robbins wasn't a twat. Now, to be fair, Tony Robinson was always a twat. He just wasn't dancing about in the street going, change, vote change, when he's talking about fucking Sir Keith Casey. Well, cute. No, he was Casey then, wasn't he? Yeah, because the Queen had died. Can we get some lols in chat for Lizzie still being in a box? Festering old bitch.
All that money could have gone towards putting more boots on the ground that wanted to be there. Because once again, this is a class war. the people who are being conscripted and beaten and sent to the front lines, often, by the way, to the most dangerous parts of the front lines, where often they will be kidnapped by other Ukrainian regiments to do their suicide missions for them. They're the poor ones. Oh yeah, leaving aside the fact, by the way, that Dubai is built and serviced by slaves as well. Sorry, indentured laborers. It's 2026. You know, you can go all the way back to the initial slave trade, because that's where America's wealth stems from. That's actually what the colonization and settling of America depended upon.
Literally true, by the way. You know, there's a really horrible phrase that was used called the 5 civilized tribes. So I forget exactly which ones they were. It doesn't really matter for the purposes I'm mentioning it. During the early days of the American expansion into the North American continent, they had these 5 North American First Nations people, tribes, that they referred to as the 5 civilized tribes. And they were called that because they were the ones that did slavery. Literally true, by the way. They did slavery, so the white people called them the civilized tribes. Whereas the North American native peoples who didn't were uncivilized. America is the society you get when you build your entire basis up upon slavery, yeah. But humans do seem to love a cheeky bit of slavery, you're quite right.
Great book, The Half Has Never Been Told. Thank you, Brooks. Fundamentally, it is a class war between a slave society that is transnational. No, not that one, calm down. And poor people who don't own capital. Zelensky's bragging about sending over drone operators to places like the UAE. I thought they were short on personnel. What's the deal? And the deal is Ukraine isn't being talked about anymore, which is a bit of a problem for the Ukrainian oligarchy, because it means that, you know, people aren't fighting as hard for money to get sent to Ukraine. And here's the thing people need to understand. When you have a tremendous amount of money being funneled into a country in wartime, and the regime is corrupt and gains economically by money put into public coffers, they have a direct interest in maintaining that state of tension for as long as possible, because that is the condition of their power. This is also the...
Okay, but like, what regime isn't corrupt? Like, you're essentially saying war is war crime. Now, if your position is that you're anti-war, that's fine. If your position is that you're a pacifist, at least argue that point. But I suspect you're not. I certainly don't get the impression that you're a pacifist. So you are trying to sort of have your cake and eat it, I think.
The case for Putin, by the way. You don't live in a world where there's an evil empire and Helm's Deep over here, and just one decides to get global power and attacks that one, and the other one's like, oh, every boy able to wield a sword, man the wall, or they'll kill us all. And this is really basic. This is not something revolutionary that I'm explaining.
Yeah, you don't fucking say.
This is known for a very long time. Liberal pedophiles don't want to admit that.
He's really pleased with that phrase. He's so fart huffy. That little smirk he did. Oh God. Oh, I mean, it is a funny line, I suppose.
Because they are also in the same position. It's sort of like why liberals who are pro-genocide will also entertain two-state solutions, even though two-state solutions are not being offered, and nobody believes they will get them.
It's very much trying to make fetch happen, yes.
Because a two-state solution allows people to entertain the myth that they are actually in favor of both sides flourishing if only people could just get along. Meanwhile, everything they do and say privileges the position of the powerful aggressor that is massacring civilians. If there is one irony about the situation, it is this. As a consequence of the fictional logic of national self-determination, Ukraine is allowed to enslave white people, where for most countries that would be a problem. Why? Because Ukrainians who are enslaved by the state against their will to be sent to die in the meat grinder are fighting for their own freedom. Iranians can't do that. Palestinians.
Well, okay. Oh. Enslaving white people. They're not enslaving white people. At least not exclusively. Firstly, it depends on exactly how you define white. It's only very, very recently the Ukrainians have been considered white. They are light-skinned, of course, but that's not quite what people mean, I think. And secondly, I don't think they don't conscript non-white people in the Ukraine. So I know you're making like a, what you think is a really based woke point here about white people good, brown people bad logic of the West, which, yeah, does exist, to be sure. I don't think it makes the point you think it makes.
Palestinians can't do that. They're just victims. They don't have agency. Victims and criminals. That's what you get. Reverse racism is real. Who thought? What the fuck is aristocratic anarchism? That's me. See my posh cardigan?
That was fucking awful. I genuinely, I rarely will I do this, but I almost feel like apologising to you, chat. I do, like, I will watch slop content for the entertainment of it, right? I will watch things way worse than that, way more like way more like crazy fucking racist people, or the fucking, what's that, the Italian fucking fascist wanker, the 255 gets me to watch, Metatron, dickheads like that, or fucking, I don't know, Shadowversity or something, those Lindy Beige's weird fucking moments. I will watch crap, right, with you, and indeed for you, I suppose, to an extent, for your entertainment, for your delectation. And yet, I never feel like I need to apologise for that. Because that's just, like, meaningless. Absolutely fucking meaningless. Like, I can watch a Metatron video and it's just slop. It's just slop. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't think it means anything to you either. Other than as entertainment to see, like, essentially it's a lolcow thing, right? It's just a joke. The person making the video doesn't think it's a joke. They don't mean it as a joke, but it is extraordinarily funny to watch people thrash around about bullshit. Whereas that was just slightly boring and depressing and about a very serious topic, and he talked shit. And that's not my kind of thing. That just felt bleh. Do you know? Oh, pardon me. There you go. It was just shit. Yeah, and it was absolutely motivated by drama. You can tell it was motivated by streamer drama shit, because he fucking mentioned loads of streamers. Fucking Wick. Who the fuck brings up Wick? Who the fuck gives a shit about Wick? Who, again, just to reiterate, is a bitch. But no, Mike, Dave, who gives a fuck? Why are you deciding anything about geopolitics based on Wick or Dylan Burns or anyone else? Who is Wick? Well, okay, so yeah, I suppose he's not even that well known. I've been on a few of his panels a long time ago. I stopped going on them a long time ago. He's neo-libby fucking kind of Destiny Orbiter type person, I suppose. Actually, is he a Destiny Orbiter? Is that fair? Maybe. Anyway, a kind of Destiny simp guy. No, he's not British, by the way. He's American. But he's a sort of Destiny Orbiter guy. The person you're thinking of is Lonerbox, who's a different person. No, Wick is an American streamer who does like panel discussion things, which, like I say, I used to go on a long time ago, but I've stopped. I couldn't be bothered. They weren't really very worthwhile, and they're on at fucking 2 a.m. here, so I can't be bothered. I'll stay up for something worthwhile, but I'm not staying up for that. And yeah, he's a bitch. He is a bitch who talks shit and has awful people on to talk rubbish about serious topics and some not so serious topics. And clearly, President Sunday and I have a similar low opinion of Wick and his content. I actually don't think he's necessarily on a personal level the most objectionable person in the space, but he is pretty. Again, he's a bitch. So, yeah, but look, I don't judge anything based on what some fucking streamer does or whatever. I will say that Kev is one of the few streamers I enjoy. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're mad. You're clearly fucking mad. But yes, well, exactly. I am unironically British, and therefore you shouldn't listen to what I have to say. Otherwise, you basically are doing the Amritsar massacre. When you think about it, historically, with the transitive property, you basically are firing upon innocent, peaceful protesters in India. Fact, undeniable fact. What's this 255? What have you got for me? If this is Metatron, if I've like stirred the Metatron yearnings within you, 255. Oh, for fuck's sake! Oh, 255. You were doing so well. You hadn't suggested him for fucking ages, and then I go and mention the prick, and all of a sudden it's. You are genuinely the only streamer I follow. Oh, well, thank you, Unless a nameless entity. I mean, there are much better streamers. You should check some of them out. Yeah. Hassan Piker just embarrassed himself. Okay, that seems like suitable slop for another time. Thank you, 255. I was hoping it would be a Beadle video, you fucking prick.
You just assaulted me!
Absolute fucking penguin. You goose. You fucking seagull. She's at podcast friends now. What do you mean she's at podcast friends? What? I don't know. Anyway, I'm just fucking rambling now. I need to leave. No, I know who the she is, but what do you mean she's at podcast friends now? What does that mean? I don't know what you fucking mean. You're ending now. Could you raid into Lucy? Oh, Navarra. Oh, well, no, I think she's back home now. But, yeah. Or maybe she isn't. I don't fucking know. But she does. She has been doing Thursdays and Fridays. So, you know. Speaking of Beadle, you were mentioned on Wednesday. Fuck you! What do you mean I was mentioned on Wednesday's show? What did they say? Kev, she is growing out of the nest. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I predicted this would happen, by the way. I was ready for that. And there's absolutely no fucking hard feelings at all. She, I always knew she would, she had the talent to be able to make something of herself in this space, in this industry. If she worked hard enough and got a bit of luck, and she has, and that's, honestly, I wish her all the fucking best. There will come a point, I'm sure, where she will do no shows with me anymore. Not because she necessarily has fallen out with me, but because she's busy. She's moved into a different realm. And that's absolutely fine, and I wish her all the best. Genuinely, there's no pettiness or game playing with me at all. That's what happens. Anyway. Kevcast friends. Well, exactly. Maybe I'll develop a stable of people that I helped along the way. I don't know. We stan Helena, she's a good egg. Well, to be fair, that egg cracked a long time ago, I think. I think that shell is in pieces, mate. Anyway. Raid some random geek. I suppose I could do. Someone said, is Lucy going? I'm not sure. Hang on. Didn't you help the serve sales? Well, yeah, I did very long time ago now, but yeah. Well, I mean, that's how I know Lance, is that he came on my show. Oh, how many years ago was that? Wow. 8 years ago or something? 9 years ago? Maybe? Fuck, that was a long time ago. Yeah, anyway, they got banned by YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and I had them on and was like, oh, give them a little boost or whatever. And they were really cool, and me and Lance have stayed friends since. We don't talk very often, but we are friendly. Yeah, okay, I'll go over to some random geek on YouTube, because they're the only person I can say. Have fun with that. And we'll go over to Lucy on Twitch, I think. And you can go and tell her all about how Ukraine and Russia are exactly the same. And I'm sure she will definitely agree with President Sunday on that. Funny. Go and say hello. And yeah, I will see you all. Is it past midnight yet? No, it's not. It's only just gone 11. Early doors. I will see you all tomorrow for things and whatever. Yeah, we'll do something. I'll try and have something a bit more. I don't know. Just better. I think just better is the word I'll go with. Free Palestine. Free Ukraine. Free Cuba. Free your mind and your soul. No pass around.